What if your empathy, the part of you that feels like both your greatest strength and your heaviest burden, was never a gift to begin with, but a survival strategy? Carl Jung believed that many empaths are, in truth, children who were never allowed to be selfish, children who learned that their own needs had to be silenced so others could stay comfortable. In this video, we'll explore Jung's final message about empaths and why it challenges everything you thought you knew about compassion. We'll look at how empathy often begins as vigilance in childhood, how the shadow hides the forbidden right to selfhood, why burnout is a crucial turning point, and how reclaiming what Jung called sacred selfishness transforms relationships and restores wholeness. By the end, you'll see how the empath's deepest wound can become their greatest path to integration. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the Mental Dose channel and join our Telegram community, where you'll get early access to new videos and insights on personal and spiritual growth. Now, let's get started. Jung believed that the psyche adapts to its environment with extraordinary creativity. For children raised in unstable or emotionally unpredictable households, this adaptation often takes the form of vigilance. They learn to scan every gesture, every tone of voice, every silence, because their safety depends on it. What looks like empathy from the outside is, in fact, the nervous system trained to anticipate danger. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies on trauma and child development show that chronic stress reshapes neural pathways. The amygdala becomes hypersensitive, and the prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-regulation, develops around the constant need to predict others' behavior. In practical terms, this means the child becomes an expert in reading the room, often before they can even process their own emotions. Jung would have seen this as an early detour in individuation. Instead of forming a secure sense of self, the child organizes their identity around external cues. The self becomes secondary to the task of keeping others stable. This is why so many empaths grow up feeling like ghosts in their own lives, present for others, absent to themselves. This is not the end of the story, though. For Jung, every adaptation contains the seed of transformation. At the heart of Jung's psychology lies the concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we are forced to reject. For empaths, the shadow is not filled with cruelty, but with something deceptively simple: the right to selfhood, the right to desire, the right to say no, the right to put themselves first. In the development of personality, Jung emphasized that every child requires what he called a natural degree of narcissism, a period where their own needs take center stage, building the foundation for a strong ego. When this is denied, the child learns that being selfish is dangerous. Over time, their authentic impulses, anger, frustration, self-assertion, are cast into the shadow. What emerges instead is a perfected persona, the helper, the caretaker, the listener. Jung noted that the persona is necessary for social life, but when it dominates, the true self is buried. The empath begins to live as an actor in their own story, admired for their kindness, but unable to touch their own authenticity. This is why Jung insisted that meeting the shadow is not about battling darkness, but about reclaiming what was unjustly discarded. For empaths, it means allowing the forbidden word no to surface without guilt. When the shadow remains unacknowledged, the psyche eventually forces a reckoning. Jung called this the principle of compensation. The psyche seeks balance when one side of the personality becomes overdeveloped. For empaths, that balance often arrives as burnout. Burnout is not mere tiredness. It is the collapse of a strategy that has outlived its usefulness. The empath who has spent decades managing others' pain suddenly cannot do it anymore. Compassion turns into heaviness, and the desire to help morphs into resentment. Jung would have seen this not as weakness, but as the unconscious demanding a new form of life. Modern psychology frames this similarly. Research on compassion fatigue in caregivers shows that without boundaries, empathy turns toxic, leading to depression and identity loss. Jung anticipated this. He wrote that the psyche rebels when the authentic self has been silenced for too long. What looks like a breakdown is in fact the beginning of breakthrough. This is the moment when the question shifts from, how do I care for others, to, how do I care for myself without shame? And this shift, Jung believed, marks the true beginning of individuation. Before we go on, if this exploration of Jung's message about empaths is helping you see yourself more clearly, consider sharing it with someone who might need this perspective. And if you'd like to support this kind of thoughtful content, you can click the thanks button below. Your support truly makes a difference. Now let's continue. Jung introduced the idea of what we might call sacred selfishness, the recognition that caring for yourself is not betrayal, but necessity. He argued that wholeness cannot exist if the ego is always denied. The paradox is clear. To give authentically, you must first be willing to receive. When empaths begin to honor this, their relationships undergo a profound recalibration. Some connections collapse because they were built on silent self-abandonment. Others deepen because they are finally rooted in mutual authenticity. Jung described this as the difference between projection and encounter. Projection reduces a person to a role. Encounter recognizes them as an individual. This transformation is not only psychological but spiritual. It reflects what Jung called individuation's ethical demand, to live one's own truth, even when it disappoints others. Sacred selfishness does not diminish compassion, it purifies it, turning empathy into a conscious gift rather than a compulsion. At the end of this process stands what Jung would describe as the integrated personality, a human being who contains both sensitivity and sovereignty. The integrated empath no longer confuses hypervigilance with love. They choose when to open themselves and when to protect their boundaries. Their empathy is no longer a survival reflex, but an intentional act of connection. In Jung's terms, they embody psychological sovereignty. They are no longer governed by the moods of others, but by their own inner compass. They live not as a function, the fixer, the listener, but as a full human being. From this place, empathy regains its original purity, not sacrifice, but presence. This, Jung believed, is the privilege of a lifetime, to become who you truly are. For the empath, it means transforming the survival pattern of childhood into a conscious strength in adulthood. It means reclaiming the selfishness that was once forbidden and recognizing it not as vice, but as the missing half of compassion. So let me ask you, have you felt this shift in your own life, from compulsive empathy to conscious empathy? Share your reflections in the comments, and let's explore this journey together. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe to Mental Dose for more explorations of Jung, psychology, and the path toward wholeness.